Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you in the next few minutes about healing the hurts of life. Every one of us have situations in our lives that cause us pain. Every one of us get hurt from time to time. We may get hurt in a physical way by falling down or breaking a bone, but one of the more painful ways is when we are hurt mentally or emotionally, when people say things or do things that cause us pain. It's kind of interesting that so often in our lives that when we do have hurts or pains that injure us and wound us emotionally and mentally, we hold on to those hurts and pains. And we know from childhood that when we hurt ourselves physically, when we fall down and have a scratch or a cut or break a bone, that as we think about the hurt and the pain, and as we concentrate upon it and we give it energy and give it power, it hurts us even more. One of the things that I think we need to understand and realize is regardless of our faith tradition, regardless of our religion, regardless of who we are, regardless of how much money we have, how much understanding we have, how much intellect or reason we have, every one of us are going to be visited with hurts and pains. Hurt and pain is simply a part of life. And the experiences that we have that hurt us or that wound us or that bring us pain in our emotions and in our minds so often can be used to strengthen us and empower us, and also create for us opportunities for growth and understanding of other people. But as long as we hold on to the hurt, as long as we hold on to the pain, as long as we concentrate on it and give it force and effort and purpose in our lives, it will continue to hurt us again and again. One of the things that we say so often when we're hurt or angry and pain comes is, I don't have to take this. That's usually said in a confrontational way, but it's really a true statement. I don't have to take this. And it simply affirms and means that when I am hurt or when I am in pain, I don't have to accept it. I don't have to allow it to have the effect and the influence that it has on my life and on your life. But the choice is always ours. And the way that we think about the pain and the way that we think about the hurt and whether we hold on to it and give it strength and feed it and allow it to grow will determine whether or not it hurts us once or twice or hurts us forever. It's a very interesting thing about hurts, emotional hurts especially, people saying things that hurt us. If it's a family member or a friend, it means more than if a stranger says it. If a stranger makes a comment and says that you're a wimp, for instance, it probably doesn't have the same impact as if your spouse or your dear friend said you're a wimp. We measure the ideas and the feelings that we have and the hurts that we have from the people who inflict them upon us. And of course, so often in our lives, we are closest to our family and friends, and we are most interested in what they think of us. And so often things that are said to us or said about us will wound us or hurt us deeply. And if it's said by a friend or a family member, it hurts us even more because we want to be thought of by those people as strong. We want to be thought of in a supportive way. We want to be nurtured and we want to be helped. When we have things that happen in our lives that cause us hurt, especially when we accept the things that are said about us or to us and draw them into our heart and mind and allow them to hurt us emotionally and mentally, we need to understand that these hurt feelings often compromise our physical health. They certainly compromise our emotional health and our mental health, but they can also compromise our physical health. It is not possible to store hurt feelings and enjoy good health, because as you are hurt, as you suffer, as you have pain, and move through that process, it internalizes and it has a variety of negative influences upon the physical body. So often it raises blood pressure. It can cause ulcers. It can contribute, some people believe and say, to cancer and heart disease and a myriad of other kinds of physical afflictions that we have. So we really need to deal with hurt, and we really need to deal with pain in our life in a very positive and supportive way, and we need to be able to resolve it, because if we don't, we're going to have negative influences in our physical being as well as in our mind and in our emotions. Resentment in our lives is really just simply a resensing of the event or the experience, a resensing. If we really think about it, when we resent what someone says or we resent what they have said about us, And every time that we call that into our conscious mind, every time that it becomes a part of our thinking, we relive the hurt and the pain, and we resense it. And as we resense the pain and resense and relive what has been said, it wounds us more and more deeply, and we allow it a lot like a wound or like a cut to fester. And as it festers, then the hurt and the pain becomes more devastating in our lives. So often we are hurt by what people say because we have a poor self-image. We may even lack self-love or self-affection, and we expect other people to support us in our image of ourselves. And because we have so often a negative personal image, self-image, then as people say things, we are hurt and wounded directly by what they say. Psychologists and sociologists tell us that one of the greatest difficulties that we have as a people is in our own self-image, the image that we have of ourselves. In truth, we are perfect and whole children of God, and we need to understand and realize that because we are whole and perfect children of God, we are empowered with the strength and the power and the peace of God, and also we are lovable and loving, just as God is lovable and loving. And so we have to accept ourselves as lovable people. That is, people can love us, we're worthy of being loved, and we are capable of giving love. We need to see ourselves as strong and whole persons, whole children of God, and we need to project that thought to others and see them in that way. And when we do that, that poor self-image, that negative self-image changes, and that unlovable aspect of our life changes. All of us come into life as innocent little children, and as our thought processes begin in childhood, they begin to be seeded and planted by those who are around us. One of the first things that we all begin to do when we're dealing with young children in the very formative ages is tell them what they can't do. Don't do this, don't do that. And we create within individuals and within their thought processes a negative image so often. And that translates further along in life for many of us as image problems of our own life and of our place in life. And because of that, we need to be very vigilant and aware of how it is the dynamic of our mind is acting and reacting to what people say. People are going to say what they say to you and about you, to me and about me. That's always going to be the case. These statements that they make may be motivated by something they have seen or something they felt, may be something totally unrelated to us and something that's going on within that individual. But we need to understand that when people say or do things, they simply say or do them. And how we act and react, how we absorb, and how we interact with what they say to us is our choice. And it is our dynamic that is either causing us to be successful and positive in the experience of life, or is causing us to absorb and hold on to hurts and pain. What we need to do is to take the very end of the statement that we make so often about what people have said, and we need to take it off of the statement and the sentence. One of the things that we could say so often when someone hurts us is, I can't forget what they did to me. I can't forget what she said to me. I can't forget what he said about me. And if we removed the to me or about me and took that off of the sentence and reconstructed it, we would see that we need to forget what they did. Forget what they did. They did what they did. They said what they said. Why they said it is really none of our business. How we react to what they said is always our business. And if we condition our way of thinking about the hurts and the pains in life and what people say in our life experience to us and about us, we're able to change how that impacts us and how this resensing of pain can be delayed, it can be lessened, and ultimately it can be eliminated. I'd invite you not to resense the pains that you have, not to resense the hurts. And every time you rethink them, you re-experience them and you reinforce them. Circumstances and situations present themselves in our lives always. People say the things that they say, and we must learn not to resist and not to resent. I'd like to repeat that for you. We need to learn not to resist and not to resent what people say, what they do, or what takes place in our lives. That may be very difficult for many of us. And for many of us, we need to change our way of thinking, the conditioning that we've had from childhood and through our lives, the way that we think, not to have resentment and not to resist. We believe so often that we have to resist, we have to fight, and we have to struggle. But the spiritual reality, the mental dynamic is, and the truth is, that we don't have to struggle and we don't have to resist. What we need to do is to get into the flow of life, to get into the flow of the dynamic of mental process, into the flow of our thinking, so that it is attuned with universal truth, with dynamic power, and with the absolute presence of God. It doesn't even require that we believe in or espouse the reality of God to change our way of thinking and to give up the hurts and to begin the process of healing the hurts and the resentment of life. But what we do need to do, we need to understand that we live in our minds, and the process of our minds and the way that we think about every circumstance, situation, hurt, and pain will determine how it is we feel. Forgiveness, detachment, lack of resistance, a release of resent in our lives create for us a healing dynamic and power that will touch our physical bodies, but more importantly, will cleanse and empower our minds and our thought process. Christian theology is filled with all kinds of ideas about hurt and pain. One of the things that I'd like to share with you is a particular scripture in the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus is asked how often it is that we should forgive those who harm us or those who hurt us. And his response is not 7 times, but 70 times 70. That's saying simply that our process of mind, it isn't talking about forgiving what someone says over and over and over again. It's saying that if we want to be free, if we want to be empowered, if we want to be strengthened, then we need to be willing to forgive, to release, and to forget, and to let go of the resistance and the resentment. And we need to do it not 7 times 7, but 70 times 70, which means we do it over and over and over again. And as we do it 70 times, what happens is our way of thinking changes. Our way of thinking changes. It doesn't have to do with believing what's in the Bible. It doesn't have to do with believing what this man Jesus said. It has everything to do with conditioning and changing the process of our mind and how it operates and how it works. Christ Jesus was the great manifestation of the perfect life, the exemplifier of the perfect life lived. There have been others and there will be others who bring the truth and the reality that he brought. But for us at this point in world history, he is an example. He is a way shower. He is a teacher. He is a savior that allows us to be saved from the physical experiences of non-reality and the appearance of what is in life for the reality of what truly is in life. And what truly is in life transcends the things that we see and experience in this physical life. And if we can condition our way of thinking and embrace a new way of thought, then we can begin to heal our hurts. We can begin to relieve ourselves of pain. We can begin to be healthy and whole. We can let go of our negative self-image. We can let go of our unlovable state of mind. And we're able to accept whatever has come to pass as what has come to pass. And we can deal with it in a positive and supportive way. I invite you to change the way that you think about hurts, about pain, and about things that have been said to you and about you, and to allow the healing of your soul and of your mind and of your body to begin. I'd like to invite you at this point in the program to pause for a moment of prayer and reflection. We believe that prayer is a tremendous centering force, and so we invite you to join with us at this point. Eternal and loving God, we gather our hearts and minds together in the reality that pains and hurts come into our lives, but that we always have a choice in terms of how we will respond to these pains and hurts. And we choose to accept the fact that we must forgive 70 times 70. And when we do, we are free from the burdens of hurt and pain. And we know and pray these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of love. Amen.
That was a wonderful reminder that we should never project our own thoughts onto the actions and meanings of others.
And that's exactly what we do. And you said it's very eloquently in that we project. And so as people make the statements that they make about us, then we project our thought process into their thought process. We become a part of it and one with it, and we resense it and let it hurt us again and again.
And then it hurts us again and again. And then if we do that too much, it creates a physical problem. And I was thinking of a friend of mine a number of years ago who we were very close friends, and she had a daughter whom I adored, a very beautiful young woman, and that young woman was living with a young man, and they lived together, shared a home, and my friend said that her daughter really didn't like the young man, and he was rather crude, and he wasn't quite up to her standards, but I wouldn't have been critical because that was their choice. And so my friend said, well, her daughter was going to, just as soon as she financially could, leave that circumstance and move into her own space. And I said she should do it immediately, even if she just has to live in one room, because she's actually prostituting herself by living with him just for the financial gain. And if she chose to live with him because she loved him, that would be one thing. But to live with it for the financial gain, that's another. And then our friendship was dissipated because of that. She was so hurt that I said that. To her, I was calling her daughter a prostitute. To me, I was saying, don't let your daughter prostitute herself. Don't let her fall into that modality, because it's not a healthy way for her to be living.
Mm-hmm. And your friend, as you were interacting with her, should have realized that your comments were comments of a constructive nature,
Yes.
and they were just that. But instead, she projected
Yes.
into them and got angry and got hurt and allowed that to be repeated over and over in her life until the relationship was soured.
Yes, she just severed the relationship right away after that. And it took me a long time to figure out what it was, and then she finally told me, because I couldn't imagine what was the problem, because she knew that I loved her daughter and cared for her and wanted what was best for her. And I thought of her daughter as I would as if she were my own. If that were my daughter, I wouldn't be too enthused about a young girl in her teens living with a young man. But on the other hand, I would have felt I would have felt the same way with my own daughter as I did with that young lady, that the circumstances alter everything.
Mm-hmm. And the hurt went on, and of course that hurt had a cost to your friend, it had a cost to you, and certainly within her, there were a lot of physical changes that took place too, probably because of it.
It very well could have been, very well. And also her daughter might have learned something about life and how to handle her life and to live with integrity, because to me it was lacking in integrity. And if she might have learned, if her mother had said, well, talk with Iris and see what she has to say about this. And then the daughter probably would have talked with me. But when the mother was so defensive in that way, and I don't know what was said, but anyway, that's part of life. And that's how we project our own feelings onto what someone says. And it's not even what is being meant. So often it's not even what is being meant. And usually when the deepest hurt occurs, it's the person who's being blamed for this hurt doesn't even mean it the way it's perceived as having been meant. And I've seen that happen over and over in my counseling work, and I'm sure that you have too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as the time passes and as individuals re-sense this experience and recount it and relive it, it becomes even more and more destructive. It's almost like the downward spiral of depression, where depression, as we get more and more depressed, pulls us down. And so the hurt hurts more and more and more and more because it's relived and because it's misinterpreted.
Yes, and we just hold on to those old hurts instead of, if they do indeed work in that way, because and then they stay forever. And if we get them ingrained enough, then it's really almost impossible to get them out of our psyche, out of our consciousness, because it is so highly ingrained.
And of course, a major part of that thought process that you're just sharing with us has to do with people who hold on to these hurts because they're so much a part of their, so ingrained, as you said, in their inner being. They don't want to let go of them, because if they let go of them, they'll have to deal with life in a different way.
That is the major point, and that's the most important thing we could possibly say, because that's what happens.
Some people enjoy their suffering.
Yes.
And I know one of the things that I say so often to people in business that work with me is if someone wants to be a martyr, help them to be a better martyr. Because so often it isn't that we need to support the individuals as much as we need to allow them to work through what they need to work through. And of course, if they are going to suffer and are unwilling to let go of the suffering, then they have to deal with that and they have to go on with it and they have to take the negative aspects of it, both in their physical body and in their mind and in their heart. And we would hope, of course, that people would let go of the hurt and be willing to move on with life, but many people are not willing to.
Many people are not, and that's why they get into the problems that they do in a health-wise, because it's just like people blame their mothers for everything forever. And I have two sons, and fortunately, both of them think I was a pretty neat mother, and actually they think I was better than I really was, and than I see myself having been. But I know people who blame their mothers for things, and then they never grow beyond that. And it creates grave problems for them in future relationships because they can't accept the responsibility. And you know what that amounts to is self-responsibility. Because when we're growing up, the way our parents teach us is beyond our control as a rule, the way they treat us. But we have the choice then, after we're grown, of living the way we choose. And whatever we choose is right for us if we're living in fullness of our own consciousness. And that's the way we should live. And the people who don't do that, then hang on to old hurts, and they get so involved in trying to prove that the parent or whoever it was hurt them, really meant to hurt them, when really that person was just living the way they thought life should be lived.
And that blaming creates such a negative spiral that so many don't want to let go of it.
Yes.
And of course, if they don't let go of it, then their life experience just continues to be compounded by the problem. And I think so often in psychotherapy and counseling, we find people who do regression, and many people do, and it has value. But the important aspect is that which you pointed out, and that is that when we go to the point of the source of the pain, is to get over it, is to deal with it, instead of simply going there and staying there, because in fact, if we go there and stay there, we are no better off than we were when we began to examine the problem at the other end.
Exactly. In fact, we're worse off because we've wallowed in this negativity. And there are lousy parents, let's face it. There are parents who are terrible, and there are parents who don't show love and caring for their children. But we have to rise above that, just like there are spouses, mates, and relationships that are crazy. But we have to rise above whatever we get and then make our decisions and make our choices and go on from that. But it's how we deal with things. It's what we project onto the situation that's important. And those of us who study the laws of karma know that we come in with certain things we're going to work through, and we choose the parents to give us whatever it is we're wanting to work through in that life. And so we've chosen the parent that we've gotten, and who knows, it might be to help lift that person to a higher level just through our way of being. If we are indeed a desirable person, then it might have been just to help lift that parent.
And the issue of personal responsibility always comes back because we all know people who have had horrible childhoods and horrible parents and have turned out to be the most positive, successful people in the world. And yet other people who are constantly drawing upon the resensing of my childhood that caused me to be the way that I am, and their life never becomes very much. And it goes back to the issue of personal responsibility. And what we talk about in metaphysical theology and philosophy is that we all need to change our way of thinking, and we can do that at any point in time. And if we draw upon a negative childhood, that's just the way it was. Now our choice is how we think about it and how we deal with it. And giving up the hurt and giving up the pain is a choice that we can make. Obviously, some people need help in the process. Counseling is a wonderful modality, spiritual exercises, meditation, prayer, a whole myriad of things that help in dealing with the process. But the key is to deal with the process and move on.
Yes, that's it. And that's what you said earlier on self-responsibility. It's assuming self-responsibility and going on from there and making the most we can with whatever has happened in our lives, and knowing that what's happened is through our own efforts that have in great part brought on whatever has happened.
And the hurts that we have in life can either strengthen us and empower us, or they can break us and destroy us.
Exactly.
And the choice is always ours.
Yes. And those people who whine about life and problems of life are the ones who don't assume self-responsibility. They're just putting the blame off on someone else.
Mhm. And as they do that, they continue the cycle.
Yes, and it's never ending until we assume responsibility and say, yes, I chose this parent, and yes, I didn't get along with my parent, but that's life.
Mhm. And it's true of all the aspects of our life, not only our childhood, but when someone we know and respect or love says something that hurts us, certainly it might hurt for the moment, it might cause us some pain, but we have the choice to either hold on to it or let go of it.
Yes, and we can look to see where they're coming from, the person who hurt us. And if they're coming from a place of being mean and hateful, then ignore it, drop it, let it go. And if they're coming from a space of really wanting to be constructive, then listen and and just be grateful that they care that much, even if we don't want to take their advice. That's our prerogative. We don't have to take any advice unless we choose to. But we can listen carefully. And this is what I teach in my counseling. Ask everyone, ask different people questions. Ask the same question of 6 different people if you want to. But evaluate those answers, see what makes sense to you, and then use that in that way. And be grateful that the people cared enough to give you advice and to answer your questions.
And we need to say, too, that we're not talking about staying in abusive situations at all.
Exactly.
If people are destructive and hypercritical and are causing pain for no reason, then just move out of that environment and move from that relationship.
I'm not too fond of the term codependent because it's so it doesn't have a particularly good ring to me. But there are people who are codependent and they stay in bad relationships just because they like, in a sense, of the whatever's happening. It's a certain form of masochism, I suppose, but and they don't need to stay in those relationships. They choose to stay in those relationships.
And our life in total is a choice, and we all make choices in how we'll deal with the hurts and with the pains and with the challenges. Reverend Freelander and I have been sharing with you ideas in confident living and healing your hurts. We hope that you found this information useful. Look forward to seeing you next time. Such a blessing I can't define. Confident living helps me expand visions of value the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit moves from within.